Hello everyone, welcome to Chelsea Sport Focus. But before we dive in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment of breaking news. Let's get started.
Chelsea's struggles since the Blue Co takeover in 2022 have become a familiar and uncomfortable pattern. And while much of the criticism has focused on performances on the pitch, the situation off it is arguably just as concerning. Massive investment, constant restructuring, and ambitious long-term planning were supposed to propel the club into a new era. Instead, Chelsea have found themselves trapped in a cycle of underachievement, confusion, and missed opportunities, none more symbolic than the ongoing failure to secure a permanent front-of-shirt sponsor. On the pitch, the story is well known. Chelsea have spent extraordinary sums reshaping the squad, leaning heavily into a recruitment model built around young players with perceived resale value. In theory, it was a strategy designed to balance competitiveness with sustainability. In practice, results have been inconsistent at best. Managers have come and gone, systems have changed repeatedly, and continuity has been sacrificed in the pursuit of a vision that has yet to properly materialize. The promise of buying low and selling high has proven far more complicated when performances suffer and player values stagnate or decline. Yet even as disappointing as the football has been, the off-field issues arguably cut deeper. Few things illustrate this better than the club's prolonged inability to secure a long-term shirt sponsor. For a club of Chelsea's stature, history, and global reach, going multiple seasons without a front-of-shirt deal is almost unthinkable. It is not merely an aesthetic issue or a talking point for fans. It represents a significant financial failure at a time when every revenue stream matters more than ever. The club's messaging on the matter has been remarkably consistent. Briefings to journalists suggest that Chelsea have deliberately held out for a deal that reflects their perceived market value, rather than settling for an offer they consider below par. In isolation, that logic makes sense. Accepting a low-value deal could undermine future negotiations and signal weakness to commercial partners. However, context is everything, and after nearly 4 years of ownership without a stable sponsor, that justification begins to wear thin. According to The Athletic, Chelsea are once again said to be close to resolving the issue. Sources at the club claim that talks with multiple parties are ongoing and that there is still confidence a deal will be agreed before the end of the season. There is even talk of a previous agreement that came close to completion before complications caused it to stall, with negotiations reportedly continuing with that same potential sponsor. These are familiar refrains, echoed every few months since the takeover, and each time they have failed to result in a concrete outcome. For supporters, patience is understandably thin. Even if Chelsea were to secure a record-breaking sponsorship deal tomorrow, it would not erase the financial reality of having played 3 full seasons without one. Those blank years represent lost revenue that cannot be recovered, no matter how lucrative a future agreement might be. In a sport increasingly governed by financial regulations and fine margins, such losses have long-term consequences. The Damak deal, brief and limited as it was, only served to underline the wider problem. It felt like a temporary patch rather than a solution, a stopgap that raised more questions than it answered. Why had a club of Chelsea's commercial power been forced into such short-term arrangements? Why had no global brand committed to a long-term partnership? And perhaps most damagingly, what did this say about the club's direction and stability? There is also a reputational element to consider. Commercial partners look for clarity, success, and alignment. Chelsea's recent years have offered little of that. Constant managerial changes, mixed messaging about strategy, and underwhelming results on the pitch do not create an attractive environment for sponsors seeking long-term value. The shirt sponsor issue, then, may not be an isolated failure, but a symptom of broader uncertainty within the club. The ownership group will argue that rebuilding a club on this scale takes time, and that short-term pain is the price of long-term gain. That may yet prove true. But the reality is that football operates in the present as much as the future. Revenue missed today limits flexibility tomorrow, and credibility lost is hard to regain. For now, Chelsea remain in talks, once again reportedly close to an agreement, once again asking supporters to trust the process. Perhaps this time it will finally come together. Perhaps a sponsor will be unveiled. The shirts will no longer be blank. and one lingering embarrassment of the post-takeover era will be resolved. But until pen is put to paper and logos appear on matchday kits, skepticism is inevitable. After years of promises and near misses, belief will only return when speculation around Cole Palmer's future at Chelsea is almost inevitable in the modern football climate, but his absence from today's Premier League clash against Crystal Palace is likely to add fresh fuel to the fire, despite firm denials from sources close to the club. Even though Palmer trained on Friday, he has not been named in the matchday squad, with a minor injury once again ruling him out. On the surface, this looks like a routine fitness issue, yet it sits within a broader and more complex context that has defined Palmer's season so far. The attacking midfielder has been dealing with a persistent groin problem for some time. While Chelsea insist that he is now fully healed, the reality on the pitch over recent weeks has suggested otherwise. Since his return before Christmas, Palmer has struggled to rediscover the sharpness, rhythm and confidence that made him one of Chelsea's standout performers earlier in the campaign. His touch has been slightly heavier, his decision-making marginally slower, and the effortless creativity that once defined his game has appeared muted. For a player whose strengths are built on instinct and timing, even the smallest physical limitation can have a noticeable impact. This dip in form has not gone unnoticed by supporters or observers, and body language has become part of the conversation. Palmer has often looked frustrated, both with himself and with situations unfolding around him during matches. That visible irritation, combined with his continued absences and reduced influence, has naturally led to whispers about his long-term happiness at Stamford Bridge. In an era where even minor signals are amplified on social media and in transfer columns, it takes very little for speculation to snowball. However, a source quoted by Team Talk has moved to shut down any suggestion that Palmer's future is in doubt. According to that source, Chelsea remain fully committed to Palmer and see him as a central figure in the club's long-term project. They reportedly value everything he has contributed since arriving and insist that their stance has not shifted at any point. From the club's perspective, Palmer is not a problem to be managed, but an asset to be protected, particularly during a period when his fitness and form are not at their peak. Chelsea's position is understandable. Palmer has already shown that he can be a decisive player at the highest level, capable of unlocking defences, scoring important goals, and carrying creative responsibility in big matches. Players of that profile are not easily replaced, especially when they are still young and developing. The club's current focus appears to be on ensuring he returns fully fit, both physically and mentally, before placing expectations back on his shoulders. The difficulty, though, is that absence often speaks louder than reassurance. Every time Palmer is missing from a matchday squad, questions will be asked, regardless of official explanations. Supporters may accept an injury setback once or twice, but repeated omissions inevitably invite deeper analysis. In this sense, today's game against Crystal Palace represents another moment where narrative risks overtaking reality. Even if there is genuinely nothing more to his absence than precaution and recovery, the optics are unlikely to help. From a footballing perspective, Palmer's unavailability also raises questions about how Chelsea function without him. He has been a key reference point in attack, and his creativity has often masked other shortcomings in the side. Liam Rosenior will be keen to see how the team adapts, not just in terms of results, but in terms of balance and responsibility. Other players will need to step up, take risks, and shoulder the creative burden, something that could ultimately benefit the squad as a whole. There is also an argument that a short period out of the spotlight could actually work in Palmer's favour. Removing the pressure to perform while not fully fit may allow him the space to recover properly and reset mentally. Footballers at the top level are rarely afforded that luxury, particularly at clubs the size of Chelsea. But it can sometimes be essential for long-term success. If Palmer returns at full speed, confident and pain-free, much of the current noise will quickly fade. Still, the modern transfer ecosystem does not operate on patience alone. Rumours thrive in uncertainty, and the gap between what clubs say and what fans see is where speculation lives. Chelsea can insist that Palmer is central to their plans, and that may well be the truth. But sustained clarity will only come when he is back on the pitch, influencing games in the way he once did. For now, the focus should remain on his recovery and reintegration. Chelsea gain nothing from rushing him back, and Palmer gains nothing from playing at less than his best. The hope within the club will be that once fitness, form and confidence align again, the frustration will die,